whatever direction it wants.
Hello, everybody, and a very, very good evening. I'm Preeti Vikram, one of the founders of Tapas, and a warm welcome to all of you to Tapas Project Shaala's session, which is a panel discussion on our initiative called Jaga. Quickly, I want to tell you a little bit about Jaga before we invite the panelists to the stage. Now, at Tapas, we believe that children should have a very strong voice, whether in the way they learn or in the place that they learn. And so we said, how can we ensure that children's voice reaches where it's supposed to in terms of the school campus design? So we started off with the simple idea that getting children to talk about their school campus and what they want in it. We took those ideas from children across India. We had about 225 children who participated in the Jaga initiative. And we had an eminent panel of jurors who looked at these ideas and came up with thoughts on how these can be implemented, why certain ideas stood out, and how it could make a difference in the way school campuses looked in future. Today, we have three of the jurors with us on this panel who are going to be talking about the considerations for developing or for constructing of the physical campus of a school. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to the first panelist of today evening. She is Ms. Amrita Burman. Ms. Amrita Burman is the Deputy Director of Sunbeam Group of Educational Institutions. She's a passionate educator who believes that it is only through education that India's destiny can change. Ms. Burman has been associated with the Sunbeam Group of Educational Institutions for 3 decades now. She holds a master's degree in political science and has done her MBA from Kolkata. She has done her certificate course in advanced educational leadership from Harvard Graduate School of Education and developing strategies of online teaching and learning from Harvard Graduate School of Education. She has received the Albert Einstein Award in Delhi for Research in Education, India's most impactful school leader award, Future 50 High Impact Leader Award, amongst many more. She was a part of the first QSI Gauge RISC Fellowship and is the first cohort in the country organized by the Jindal Group, Global University and University of Southampton. She, along with her team, has researched and worked on the Sunbeam Precept, which guides the academic and co-curricular transactions at Sunbeam. She closely monitors the unpacking of the precept across 25 Sunbeam schools, many of them being in 2 or 3 tier towns of Uttar Pradesh. She has traveled widely both in India and abroad as a speaker, expert in host of national and international conferences, and is in complete sync with happenings in the field of education around the world. She has authored books for schools in English. She is also one of the prominent authors, educators whose thoughts feature on a special compilation of joy and power of reading brought out by Scholastic called Why I Love to Read, which features many prominent writers. So you can understand my joy of having her on this panel. Amrita ma'am, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. I'm so humbled, and it's a lovely, lovely initiative by you, Preeti. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Our next speaker is Miss apologies. Our next speaker is Miss Catherine Cogan. Catherine Cogan is a lead APBD plus C is the K-12 studio leader at CHA Consulting Incorporated. She has provided project leadership through all phases of education planning, design, and construction for various school types and sizes, including new construction and significant renovations. Before that, Ms. Kogan was the lead associate managing a team of architects, project managers, job captains for the Williams Sonoma Incorporated, account designing and building Williams Sonoma and Williams Sonoma home stores throughout the country of USA. Her area of focus is sustainable school design. Very recently, I read an article that she has written about the coexistence of learning transparency while maintaining a safe and secure environment. It really impressed me where she has covered about showcasing STEM education through the environment. It also talks about the territorial reinforcement and how learning can go much beyond the classrooms. She also emphasizes on the social and emotional factors of learning and the impact on social emotional factors the environment has. So it gives me great pleasure to invite Miss Catherine Cogan onto the stream.
Thank you so much
Catherine,
for having me.
so happy to have you today.
Thank you. This is such an honor.
And our third speaker for today is Harish. Harish Srinivasan is a learner more than anything else. That's how he defines himself. He has helped. This has helped him to design learning experiences, teach, mentor, and children over the past 7 years. He is the co-founder of an education startup called Infinite Engineers, right from college final year. He has worked with around 500 schools and has personally interacted with over 15,000 children. Transforming education has always been his core motivating element as he comes from a factory model of education system and is just not happy with it. So he's a passionate facilitator of learning who loves to research, study curriculum frameworks, and keep himself updated about the latest trends in education. To make learning awesome, he has designed learning experiences that has impacted over 10,000 children, and he strongly believes that the experience is the best teacher. So, a warm welcome to you, Harish, to our panel of eminent speakers today.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Right. So, I have all three speakers now on the panel, raring to go with the questions that we have planned for today because they have really immersed themselves in the Jaga initiative. So, first question, and this is to all three of you, and I will call on you one by one, is how was your experience going through the entries submitted by the children, the whole initiative, in fact? So, how has your experience been so far? Amrita ma'am, can we begin with you?
Yes. So I think while I was going through all the entries and then, of course, selected three ideas, I think it was a very, very novel experience, frankly, for me. Though we always have been speaking about the fact that the major stakeholder, the kids, should be a part of designing of the spaces in which they are spending a large part of their formative years. Actually, we didn't ever do it. I mean, we still don't do it, frankly speaking. There could be a lot of feedbacks we've taken from children about a number of other things. We have asked them, are you comfortable? Is everything all right? But we really haven't given them a voice in designing their spaces or talking about the issues or problems that they face when it comes to the spaces they are studying in and spending a large part of their time in. So I thought the experience was great. Frankly, for me, it was a learning experience. I thought, oh, this can also happen. And more than that, it's not only that children can be a part, children were so creative. They had a problem solving approach. They knew exactly what the problem was. They came up with fantastic creative solutions. And I thought they thought far beyond us. I mean, I could not imagine the children of that age, the children who were giving their thought, could come up with these problems and could give such beautiful solutions to it. I don't think we could even have seen them as problems. They saw it as a problem, went through a process, a thought process, and came up with solutions. So for me, it was not only a beautiful, novel experience, it was a learning experience.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, ma'am. Catherine, please tell us about your experience.
Yes. Well, I think the thing that I found really fascinating is that when we think about designing and planning for education, we have all these sort of esoteric concepts that we think about. We want to think about biophilic design, and we want to think about kinesthetic learning, and we want to think about social emotional spaces and things like that. And the thing that I loved about reading all of these solutions is that the kids had all of these. They knew all that stuff. They don't need the esoteric concepts to understand it. They know that if they're if they can see nature or be in the forest or be outside, that they have a better experience. To us, we call that biophilic design, but for them, it's just obvious, right? So I think that that's the thing that's so refreshing about it for me, was that they had all of their solutions and their ideas. I could put them into the categories that we use when we're talking about design. But they don't need the categories. To them, it's just natural. To them, it just seems like an obvious solution to what they would make a better learning environment for them. And I think that to me is very, it's refreshing, and it also just sort of distills all of the talk down to the actual things that the kids see as something that's important to them.
Absolutely. I think what you're saying is that children are intuitively better designers because they are not disturbed with all these jargon that we have developed over the years. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Harish?
Yeah. So when I first got to hear from you the idea of Jaga, I got super excited, and because 5 years back, I still remember I did a session called "What Could Be Your Dream Classroom" in a class that I was facilitating in. Well, I was getting a lot of these ideas, and then one student asked, "Will be able to implement it?" Because I'm not running the school, so I said, maybe I'll tell to the school management and see if I can facilitate. But I pretty much know I don't have the powers to do it. But when Preeti came and told this idea, I got super excited. When kids' voice are implemented, imagine the confidence they get that their voice are heard and respected and acted upon. So that was a really wonderful aspect. And while going through, I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of amazing surprises. And as I imagined, a lot of interesting ideas that came about. So that all culminates to one thing, that whatever decisions that affects children, if they have a role in it, to voice out their opinions, nothing like that. In a school campus, especially where we're teaching about a lot of democracy outside, but what if we have all those things inside the school? So wonderful, and yeah, looking forward.
Thank you so much for that, Harish. I'd like to go to Catherine next. So traditionally, the schools have been designed with a cookie cutter approach, right? I mean, we say we take one block and then we are going to replicate the same block over and over again. And I think it has been very teacher centric design, and it has always been considerations of what could reduce the costs of construction and things like that. So my question, Catherine, is being part of a group who's specializing in building schools. How can we break away from this cookie cutter approach, and how can we change the way we are thinking about schools?
That's a great question. I think, the fundamental problem is we don't know what we don't know, right? So when you're working with a community, when I'm working with a community to design a new school for them, one of the first things we do is we show them what we call role model schools. And sometimes those role model schools are very, very different, right? We show them the far, far end of the spectrum for what could be. And I think that goes a long way to really kind of breaking that preconceived idea that a school must be what we sometimes call cells and bells, double loaded corridors with classrooms on either side. You shut the door, you teach in the classroom, the kids leave to go get lunch, they come back to the classroom, you shut the door again, right? So we're trying to break that cycle. We will educate the staff and the students and the parents and the communities by showing them what else could be, what other options are there. And it's really kind of, it really shatters that preconceived idea. And that goes a long way to kind of jogging everybody's ideas and really kind of getting them to think outside of the box. And then the important thing is, I think, the important thing is really interviewing all of the, like you said, the stakeholders, right? We talk about it. We say, let's talk to the stakeholders, and we say, interview the students, interview the staff, interview the community members. But then I think one of the important things that has to happen is you have to circle back and close that loop and then actually report back to everybody what everyone said, so that the parents and the stakeholders and the staff can hear what the students said, and the students can hear what the community members said. And I think that that's important because it gets everybody kind of recognizing what all of the different goals and aspirations are for a school campus or a school design. And that we do all of that work. We'll spend a year doing all of that kind of research and reporting out and workshopping before we even start drawing a school, before I even take a pencil to paper. We do all of this kind of research and workshopping, and we'll do public forums where people sit at tables and talk about what's important to them. And that all of that work before we even design a school really gets people thinking beyond what their traditional school experience was, because that's the thing, right? Everybody says, well, it worked fine when I went to school, right? So getting people outside of that memory, I think, is really important. And so that's one of the things that I think really helps to break the cookie cutter cycle, is to spend a lot of time, put that effort in up front, really exploring what the hopes and aspirations are of the different community members who are going to use the school, and then also educating people and really kind of popping the bubble of what they think school should be.
Absolutely brilliant. And it's amazing to hear that you take a year to do this kind of research, because I think we are in this fast-paced world where everybody wants solutions so quickly, like, get me a design tomorrow, right? So it's really nice to understand your process, and I think it can serve a lot of us to weigh in all these things before we get into the construction itself, design and construction. So
yeah,
thank you for sharing that. The next question I'd like to ask Amrita ma'am. Ma'am, as you're aware, the National Education Policy 2020 of India talks about multidisciplinary approach. It talks about a pedagogy of play. It talks about something so interesting and where the child is at the center of making all the decisions. Keeping that in the background, and the way we have schools currently, the way that we are designed, I know that we have to go through this whole process of change. But as a director of Sunbeam and schools that are already set up, how do you think this transition can happen? And do you think that it's going to be difficult? And how can we make this easier for everybody?
So I think that's really great, because the NEP, of course, talks about very child-friendly approach and accessibility of children, because everybody has to be relaxed in their environment. In fact, the NCF, I saw your session on NCF, you've all read it. Wonder is what we talk about, which is, I think, a lovely word that they've used in that. So all this is attached to spaces, because if you say that something should be child-friendly, it should be experiential, then the child has to be able to access spaces easily. Besides that, when we talk about the emotional part, I think before emotional comes the physical. So if a child doesn't have accessibility to a very child-friendly washroom, for example, because I've seen these in schools, they just take it for granted that everybody can sit on a WC of any size, but that's not true. Okay, so something as possibly sounds as small as that, but I think it's extremely important. So our spaces have to be designed in a way that it is accessible. Children feel comfortable. That wonder is there. The moment you enter the class every morning, there has to be a joy because I'm going to be comfortable in this environment. So, coming back to your question, when you said we already have schools, a lot of them built in the traditional way. How do you manage to change spaces? So, according to me, it's, most of the traditional classrooms also that we have, they are, though it's been, you have a room, a classroom, you have your playground, you have those basic things. It's not so much about how many walls you have and where they are. Are they safe? Is it gated? Still, is there accessibility to places where children should be able to go to, maybe a playground where, maybe a huge playground is there where maybe a little one gets lost? So do you have a little area where the child can go out but feel safe to go and play and come back? All these things are possible, and we've done it in a lot of our schools. And possibly the most important thing is the finances, which was mentioned to you, by you to Catherine. So I think if we have the intention that over some time finances need to be pumped in once again, where certain spaces need to be redesigned, a wall broken down somewhere, something built at a place, which is not a major change in the space that you already have existing with you. So, if the intention is there, again, as Catherine rightly mentioned, are we taking the child's and the other stakeholders' voice? So, even if my space is already designed, it's important to go back to the stakeholders and again ask them, what is the change that you want us to bring in, which may be very minor but may have major impact on a child's learning? And I'm picking up one more word from what Harish said, because that is something that I keep telling myself and, the complete community that I work with. It's democracy which is important. Do we really go to the child, ask the child, give an environment in the school that the child's voice will be heard? If the intentions are that, to listen to them, to pump in a few finances, make minor changes, even a traditional school can be redesigned into a more child friendly, accessible school where there's wonder and joy and comfort of learning.
Brilliant, and I think that gives hope to so many school owners who probably, they're stuck with buildings that are old and they don't know how to do it. So, what you said gives hope that we can make the changes and, in a staggered approach, make sure that what we want to see can be achieved. So, thank you, ma'am, for that, and I think that's brilliant. My next question is to Harish. Harish, you work with different learning approaches and creating collaborative learning spaces for ensuring that the kind of interaction required between children happens. So, from that point of view, what do you feel are the biggest advantages or disadvantages that the physical space of a school has thrown at you till now?
Okay. I mean, yeah, as you said, we used to do these hands-on learning, project-based learning within classrooms, and even before 5, 6 years, we used to do in a traditional classroom where desks and benches are arranged in a certain way. But the problem there is because we're not able to ask the school give us a new space, or rather we tell them let's make them sit on the floor. We don't even need desks and benches because that's more flexible, right? In terms of coming together and working on. So I realized, I mean, we realized very sort of after 3, 4 years, we realized even environment is a teacher. I mean, we should consider that that also enables certain kind of should be nurturing the collaboration. So the child should not find even difficult to ask permission that can I ask this or can I go to a restroom? Even now that happens, right? Whenever a child says a teacher asking permission or even interacting with his or her peer group, there's a lot of discussion of permission is getting asked because our desks and benches are arranged in such a way that you should not turn right or left, just look at the teacher. But what if we change that perspective? So we started reworking on the table. So we used to work on hexagon tables now. So where 6 students will sit, even that changing the shape of the table had made huge change in the ambience. Now child feels sort of very comfortable talking to the peers because that's the purpose of the space. They need to talk to complete that, uh, do the project. So, but if in case in certain schools they say, no, I can't do a separate space for it, I can only have my existing classroom, that's when the problem comes. So then we realized, okay, then when we set up a separate space for making, then what happens to the regular classrooms? That means making cannot happen there. Only traditional teaching could happen there because it was designed for that. Now, my thought was, what if every classroom could change? At least that take that 1% shift. Maybe we also had an idea of what we could set up a maker corner in every classroom where child could have some supplies, go there and build something. These kind of changes, it tells that, okay, now you have the ownership, go and do it. So those kind of things, all these, even if we humans did not say, the spaces will tell them, okay, now you can feel comfortable. So when spaces start speaking to the child, that's a whole sort of uh, happy feeling that you get. You're being there in a space 8 hours in a day, and spending that, having that confidence is something that would be wonderful. But I wish every classroom make that 1% shift is what I'm sort of looking forward.
Absolutely, and I think this is one of the ways that we are hopeful that there is some inspiration for people to change and make that 1% change. Definitely, Harish. I think let's hope for the best. And so that just what you said about the desks and the benches reminded me of one session of yesterday that we had, where one of the speakers mentioned that the desks and the benches concept is from the prison model of school, right? I mean, that's what prisons look like, and that's what we have implemented in our schools, unfortunately. And
But
that is
that's
such
true.
a
I just wanted to add, it's the assembly line model. It is actually, it comes from the assembly line model of having these rows, and that's it's
yes.
supposed to be an assembly line where we have
It's
to
just
move
easier, yeah.
factory model. That's what they say.
Yes, yes. So I think these different models of education are today archaic, whether it's the factory model, like you mentioned, ma'am, or the prison model. I think we have to move away from that. So my next question is to you, Catherine. How can we make schools more inclusive? How can we? What are some things that you can very quickly change about school practices that can make sure that it's welcoming and open to all kinds of learners?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think that there's something to be said about. I think this was mentioned earlier that scaling the building for the student so that the student feels like it was made for them, right? So accessibility and making, it might be something as simple as having windows that are much lower than adults can see so that it's appropriate for a child to see through. And then what that does is it recognizes that the child is meant to be in that space. There are windows for that child. There's a bench that's child sized. And that allows them to feel like they are supposed to be there. They feel safe there. They feel comfortable there. And then, as you said earlier, that's where the wonder comes, right? That's where the joy comes because they recognize that this building and this space was made for them. I think when we talk about inclusion, to me, inclusion means that everyone feels welcome. It feels like they are supposed to be there. The space is meant for them. The building is meant for them. So whether that has to do with bathrooms or the way that faucets work or the way that door handles work, I think that that's all very important. And I also think that really thinking about what all of the people who are using the building really need it for, and then addressing each of those things, right? So it's not just for the grown-ups to use. It's not just for the community basketball league to use. It's for all of those things. And sometimes that's complicated because there's conflict. But I think it's important to really think about, how those things can coexist. One of the sort of silly, simple things that we do sometimes is we don't, in the United States, we've had a history of having a lot of multi-user bathrooms. And that's where a lot of the bullying happens in our schools, is in the bathrooms, because it's a space where adults aren't usually monitoring. So we're really rethinking the design of bathrooms. In some schools, we don't have multi-user bathrooms at all. There's just single-user bathrooms, so that each individual can go to their private space. There's no bullying. There's no identifying of whether that person is in the right bathroom or the wrong bathroom. We really think about that kind of, inclusion, and we think about how that affects whether children feel safe in a space. And I think that making sure that children feel safe in spaces where they're supposed to be there to learn, they're not supposed to be there to worry about whether, how they're going to get onto a bench that's too high for them, or worry about how they're going to open a door that they don't have, that is a knob and they can't turn the knob, right? They shouldn't have to worry about that. Their job there is to play and have fun and learn. And I think that refocusing the dynamics of the building so that can actually happen is important. I think the other thing to remember is that, during the school day, there are two parties in that space, right? There are the educators and the staff, and there are the students. And if you're thinking about caring for and including the entire community, you also need to think about and care for the staff. And so one of the things that we always think about is, where are they doing their professional development? Where are they having their lunch? Where are they getting their break, their moment of rest, their moment of, where can they take a breath versus just, that's important too, right? Their experience is important as well. So making sure that we're caring for and addressing the needs of the entire school community is part of what we try to do to include everybody, to be inclusive.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. I think this also ties in with what Amrita ma'am spoke about earlier in terms of creating safe spaces and accessibility to the safe spaces. So I think it kind of ties in. And I know that in terms of the learning aspect, very often the phrase that you have to Maslow before you bloom is quite often used. It talks about how the needs have to be met of the learner before we are able to move to higher order thinking skills. And so I think this ties in very beautifully to that if the child's physical needs and the safety needs are not met, we can forget about learning. And that
right.
comes on later. So I think that's brilliant. Also, your conversation and what you said about bathrooms reminded me of a discussion that we were having with the Tapas learners. So this was a circle time discussion about what can we change about bathrooms and how can we really make it more inclusive, like you were saying. So one of the first things that came up was, why are bathrooms labeled boys and girls for men and women? And is that true anymore, right? I mean, how can we just have these two genders mentioned when we are talking about the LGBTQ community? And for us, it was, I think we are still in a state of shock that our learners knew about so much, and this was something that was going on in their mind. So I think what you mentioned about having personal spaces where it's not a common bathroom space that we are sharing, it's making more and more sense. So thank you for sharing that. My next question is, I think it's about today. What do you think dictates school layouts? And Amrita ma'am, if you can share your thoughts about this, as in today, what dictates school layouts?
Sorry. Yeah. So I think even today, the school layouts, though I think when I see all the new schools that we are building and the new schools that are coming up, are positively spaces that are whether larger or smaller. I shouldn't say that, because in the metropolitan cities, it is a problem to have large spaces. But I think they are far more well designed, keeping in mind the needs of the children. Still, finances do, I think, to a large extent, come in play when it comes to what you build. But people are more friendly to the idea, more considerate to the idea that spaces should be designed in a way that it is friendly to a child. It should be well ventilated. All the new schools that I have been traveling and visiting, it may not obviously be my own school because some of them are traditional. We should try to redesign a little. But the new schools I've noticed are very well ventilated. There are common open spaces as breathers where children can move out, do their little bit of circle time, sit down. There are small play spaces. There are large spaces with small compact play spaces. There are also spaces where children can show their creativity. For example, we do a lot of, I think all the progressive schools do a lot of theater in education. So children are there speaking out. The little ones also are doing their own nukkar natak the way we do it in India and the other kind of theater. Then I think another very important thing is what Harish mentioned. It's your own classroom furniture. People have become far more particular about the kind of furniture that typical factory model has gone out. Even in the senior classes, it's so much more where even if I have that, I have space to turn it and I can do my collaboration. I can sit down, talk to each other. It's not just I, me, myself in education. It is the children close to me. It is the children in my classroom. So I think the spaces are designed keeping in mind collaboration. Even the larger spaces, when it comes to the labs, etc., or the music room, or they're also becoming so much more friendly. They are very particular about soundproofing, for example, which is something that you don't see in the traditional schools. So I may be having my music room here, and then there's another classroom going on there. And in previous years, nobody bothered. You could be disturbed for the rest of the day. If you're a 6A, whole year round, you suffer. But now it doesn't happen like that. There is soundproofing. We are more considerate about giving children spaces which are comfortable even from the sound point of view for children to do their work on. So I think there is so much more consideration. Voices are also heard. For example, even in my school, I do have a children's forum where I talk to kids and I ask them, and this is from the juniors right up to the seniors who would come and say, ma'am, I have a problem in going to the washroom. I can't reach, or I can't open the knob, or the display in my classes are so high. Can we have displays at our level? Can we be given boards where we can write, scribble easily? Sometimes it's difficult. So those little things, or the corners, the display corners, the maker areas that he spoke about, or where you have manipulative. Children are very clear about what they want at all ages. And the best part is school owners, school administrators have changed their viewpoint. They are listening to children and are considerate about giving spaces as to the needs of the kids. So I think all these things do play a huge role in the way classrooms are designed. These are the things that dictate the way classrooms are designed or schools are designed these days.
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's very heartening to see that things are changing, and I'm very happy that we are part of that change process, right? We are initiating that change. So thank you for sharing that, ma'am. Harish, I think one last question is you've had experience earlier. You mentioned that 4 years ago, when you spoke to the students about designing their classroom, there were so many responses that you got. Now we've been part of this initiative where we've had so many responses, and we are going to implement some of it at least. How do you think we can keep this conversation going? Do you have any thoughts on how children's voice can continue to affect the way that campuses are designed?
So I think as Amrita ma'am said regarding children's forum, I mean that should be sort of a very continuous practice. So I mean even the people who are designing, for example, as people who are designing furnitures, for example, carpentry people or electrical layout people, can they have meaningful conversation with the children? Because for them also it's new to design something for children, right, for their needs. I think there is a gap. I mean, what children wants and this is who's implementing, and they also have certain logistical issue of doing it, and there's always back and forth doing. But is there something? I mean, Jaga is one. I think it gives a hope or gives a possibility that certain things, whenever that book comes, whenever we see, okay, this could also be done. How a child-friendly washrooms could be. Can we have images of it? Can we have representations of it? Can we have children feedback on it? Uh, on various fronts. Even can a child review a school? Their present school. I mean, they don't have to put it in public, but they can review it among themselves, at least to the management. Can they have these kind of regular things? And at least if they can work on certain aspects, uh, and what if this could be going as a, a mini Jaga hackathon for every school is what I'm thinking on. At least uh, in a year, twice, thrice, is where that keeps them going. Because I'm just imagining what children would have sent. So a lot of children would have spoken about in the Jaga entry. They asked open spaces. They want spaces opening to nature. And I see that sort of trend when I see all the response connected somewhere. I want a balcony in my classroom, which says they want to break a wall and then open up to the outer world. So all these gives us that, and it's, I mean, when we consider certain aspects of it, I think the whenever, imagine I'm building my school with all these inputs, I think I can even spend less amount. Maybe I don't even build walls, remove two walls, reduce the money, and really invest on something else. I mean, these are thinking, even that's new for me, just to, as ma'am said, finance is also a very critical aspect. I'm just thinking, what if this is even less expensive, whatever they ask for? But what if we could also imagine that way? It's all is what I'm getting as ideas after listening to some of the entries of children. Yeah.
Spoken like a true engineer, Harish. I think you're thinking about solutions now. That's brilliant. So I think this is all great input, and I'm hoping that these conversations, like what you mentioned, Harish, will continue to happen at Tapas, like what Amrita ma'am spoke about the children's workshops. I think we also have something called as the town hall that happens every Wednesday, and then students identify what are some problems that our school has and how can we solve those problems, right? Because we're such a project-based school, it then becomes a project that they take up. So one of the things was I see auntie having to go up and down, carry things. In our smaller campus, they're having to go multiple times up and down. So they built a dumbwaiter system. It's just a simple machine, a pulley that they built and hung the basket. So I think just giving children the autonomy, the democracy, and all the right words that we've all spoken about today will ensure that our schools are much more designed for child-led learning. Right? I think that is something that I'm very excited about and hope that we are able to take this conversation. We are almost at the end of the time that we have, so I'm going to very quickly ask all three of you to share one key takeaway that you've had from the Jagat initiative. Amrita ma'am, starting with you.
So I think it was number one. I think it was an extremely great initiative. My greatest takeaway was uh, given a problem to the children, given the democracy to think, given the confidence that your voice will be heard, children will come up with very, very novel ideas, and I think powerful, simple ideas. None of the ideas were complicated that couldn't be done. So my takeaway is do it, it will happen. Give them a voice and hear their voices. They will give you their opinion.
Thank you so much. Catherine, one key takeaway.
I love that. I think that's very true. I think, give them the voice and do the thing. Just do it. For me, I was really impressed by the students' thoughtfulness for and care for each other. I thought that they had a lot of really interesting ideas about social emotional well-being, whether they recognize it or not. But there were a lot of ideas about having animals come in, like a pet corner, having animals come into the room, or a place where they could go out and be in nature, or where they could go and share each other's work, or care for their teachers in some way. And I just thought that was really remarkable, that there was an innate social emotional awareness about these kids, that they need that they can't just be lectured to all day, that they need a break. And sometimes that break they need to pet an animal, or sometimes they need to be in nature, or sometimes their teachers need a break and need to go lie down. There were a lot of ideas that tied to that social emotional well-being. And I just thought that was really remarkable, because so often in education, we're focused on metrics, we're focused on learning metrics. And I think that, when you ask the kids the questions, what do they need? What do they want? They're thinking of the whole person. And that's probably where we should be, right? We should be thinking about the whole person. So it was a great mirror, I think.
Absolutely brilliant. I think you mentioned such valid points about children being intuitively aware that it's the whole ecosystem and not just themselves. You were right. The kind of responses that came in, majority were not thinking about I, me, myself. It was thinking about the whole school. It was thinking
Yes.
about everybody in that school space.
Yes.
So, absolutely.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing that. Harish, key takeaway?
Yeah. So Catherine mentioned that. I mean, like when spaces for teachers and staffs also is very critical. So I saw one of the entry of the child who said, like, can we have a more spacious for teachers, more spaces for teachers to sort of work? So this sort of empathy, it's within them. I mean, it's always within them. So, and one of them said, okay, we don't need AC classrooms, but that's a kid who said, okay, let's have balconies instead of ACs. So more ventilation. So let's avoid having air conditioners. So all these things are very functional, very innate within them. And right now, when I see a lot of AC classrooms, it's nothing wrong, but do we really need it? I mean, are children really looking for it? It's something that we need to like ask them deeper and figure it out. So just trust them and take them along with your journey is what I feel, and I think we will see results. Yeah.
Yes, I think all of us are unanimously agreeing that we just do it. Like Catherine said, I mean, just do it, right? And I think all of us unanimously have spoken the same things, that a lot more autonomy and democracy to the children, and they will be able to provide us with the solutions, with the answers, and I think they are a lot more tuned in to themselves and the needs of the whole ecosystem around them. So I think we should give them more of a listening ear. So this has been a fantastic discussion. I know that we all have a lot of points that we could continue to go on. I'm very conscious that our next session will be beginning very shortly. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each one of you. I know that this is a Saturday evening for two of you and a Saturday morning for Catherine. So thank you for making the time, making sure that this important voice of children is transferred and translated to all our viewers. So again, thank you, big thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
See you all. Bye.